This week, we're continuing our conversations about the fourth precept, and that is to refrain from harsh and unmindful speech and cultivate loving speech and deep listening in order to alleviate ours and other people's sufferings. So, just like the other precepts, there's an aspect of this precept that's moving away from, that's refraining from causing harm with our speech. And there's also an aspect that's moving towards or cultivating loving and supportive speech. And it's this cultivation that I want to speak to today. It's all about learning to communicate skillfully. And it is so important because how we communicate with each other is really how we create our world. We're social beings living in community, and we're continually relating to each other. And we want to try to do that well. The world really needs us to do it well. So I was taken with this quote from Jack Kornfield, where he says, "Let your voice be an instrument of love." And Thich Nhat Hanh says something similar. He says, "Let your voice be an instrument of peace." Just think about that for a moment. If we want a world that's more kind and caring and loving, it begins with our own loving voices. We often speak here at the Daily Sit about the way in which we talk to ourselves in the privacy of our own minds. We can hear it and we can feel it so clearly when we sit quietly in meditation. And it becomes really a big part of our practice to learn to be kind to ourselves, to learn to change the tone and the voice of our inner dialogue. And really, we're working to let our internal voice be an instrument of love for ourselves. And that's the beginning of learning about how we want to relate to others. We all know the old adage, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Personally, I think that's hogwash. I just don't think it's true because words do hurt. And even if we're big people and we're trying to rise above them, they hurt. And not only are we sensitive to spoken words, but we're also pretty sensitive to the tone that's used, the body language, the look in the eye, the facial expression, whether there's a smile or not, hand gestures, silence. I might know just what my husband is thinking, although he hasn't said a word. And we often say to each other, there are many ways to communicate. We humans are so tuned into the subtleties of relating to each other. So it really asks us to be awake and mindful in our relationships. I'm going to assume that none of us really want to hurt another person with our speech. That is not our intention. But there are still those moments when we do. And it happens for a lot of reasons. Maybe it's at the end of a long day and you're tired. Maybe you feel exasperated by a particular person or a situation and you just can't take it anymore. Or how about being in your car with your partner and you lose your cell service, and that means you lose access to MapQuest and you're lost. Tensions rise. There are plenty of situations when we react to the stress and we lash out at someone. Words come out of our mouth almost before we know it. And honestly, it might feel good for a moment as the energy that's been building up is dissipated. But these moments often leave us feeling regret because we're not as kind as we might have liked. These are really great places to practice, to tune in to our internal experience and notice the constriction in our body and really understand that as an alert. And it's an alert to hold ourselves gently and to regroup internally. Maybe taking a deep breath or two, pausing before speaking, so our voice can be an instrument of love. And then there are those moments when the lashing out, that hurtful energy is coming towards us. And our immediate response is to defend, to protect ourselves, and maybe push back in some way. And if we notice, our voice may get a little louder, the tone of our voice might change, and the energy inside us rises too. So that we might end up meeting the energy that's directed at us with equal and kind of similarly antagonistic energy. I wonder if that feels at all familiar to you. I know it does to me. And too often in this situation, we and others get hurt. So, of course, we don't want the energy that's directed at us to be abusive in any way. And it's very appropriate to set limits that care for ourselves. But even then, can we do it with a voice that is honest and strong and also kind? In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "Look how he abused me and beat me, how he threw me down and robbed me. Live with such thoughts and you live in hate. Abandon such thoughts and live in love. In this world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. Only love dispels hate." So the question is, how can we transform these dynamics in our own interactions so that our voice can be an instrument of love more often, and so that we can dispel hate? It takes practice, and it takes a strong intention to want to change our reactions because they are deeply embedded in us. And we're absolutely going to make mistakes. I can attest to lots of them. But the good news is that we will have innumerable opportunities to try again. They arise all the time in our lives. So really, be easy with yourself. All the things we learn on the cushion support us in our effort to make a different choice. We practice to slow down and learn to bring attention into our bodies, to turn towards the uncomfortable places within us and to hold them gently, and to strengthen our mindfulness. So when we're in the midst of a challenging conversation and our bodies begin to tighten and energy begins to rise and our minds are churning, we're able to notice more clearly what's happening moment to moment inside us. And we're also able to notice what's happening between us and the other. Maybe we're more able to take a pause, a deep breath, and give ourselves the space we need to choose our words mindfully. Instead of automatically reacting by defending, maybe we can respond more lovingly. We can still be honest, that's really important, but also kind. So I wonder if any of you have ever done Tai Chi. I've only tried it a couple times years ago, but there's a movement in Tai Chi I was introduced to called pushing hands. And that offers, I think, a really good metaphor to how to transform our response to aggression that's coming our way. It's a martial art practice that's done with a partner. And like many martial arts, it originated as a form of fighting. But its secret is how it dissipates the aggressive energy of the fight. So, wrist to wrist, as one person pushes forward and tries to knock the other off balance, the other responds not by resisting the push, but by feeling it and moving with it, all the while staying balanced and grounded so they're not knocked over. They let the force of the energy flow right by them, losing some of its force before responding to it. It's a really beautiful dance. And actually, I would suggest looking at it on YouTube because my words don't quite justify it. And here, I just want to share some words of a practitioner that might be helpful. A person who practices Tai Chi. He or she says, if I feel like someone's pushing hard on me, I try to stay relaxed, rooted in what is actually important without being rigid. And I try to absorb what they're giving me until I have a chance to redirect, circle, and respond. They may be letting their own anger and frustration into our interaction. And while I'll be tempted to respond in kind, I can try to be more skillful myself. I may be able to redirect their anger and hear the underlying thing they're trying to say and respond to that. And if not, I have the option to step back to keep myself in balance. It sounds exactly like what we're talking about. It's an embodied expression of how we want to transform harsh, aggressive, or defensive speech into more loving speech by staying mindful, connected, balanced, and grounded as we respond. There are so many ways our voices can be an instrument of love. And, right now I've been exploring the places that feel like an edge to me, transforming my harsh and defensive speech. But think about the other ways you might be a voice of love. Maybe by connecting with others you generally overlook or ignore. By offering silence and spaciousness and deep listening to someone else. By speaking up for those that don't have a voice. By being honest and truthful in a kind way. It might be really helpful to just for a moment reflect on, what do you think your edge is? And can you move towards it a little bit? Whatever it is, keep your intentions close at hand. Maybe whispering them to yourself. May my voice be an instrument of love. Or may my voice be an instrument of peace. And do that to support yourself. Changing our patterns of speech is not easy, but it will make a difference. It makes a difference to you and in the lives around you, and it will create ripples out into the world. So, thank you so much for your attention.